Hello and welcome to Bar is Loaded with me, Chris Howard. And this week we have the pleasure of Mr. Mark Tallett. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing?
All right, mate. I'm all right. Obviously, we've just spoken off air about the great news that we've all just received. The gyms are reopening on the 25th. Fucking get in. Could not be happier.
Phenomenal
How
news.
are you feeling about that?
I mean, as quite a few people might know, if they've looked at Instagram, I've had the pleasure of being able to still train over this period, but obviously nothing compares to actually being in a gym with people you want to see every day and actually want to train with people. Being in a garden where you've got kids running around being kids isn't ideal, but
You
it
don't
is
have
what
to
it
duck,
is.
you don't have to duck
Um,
trampolines either.
Yeah, I mean, I almost got taken out by a trampoline, so that was fun. And like getting ready for a max, and then it starts raining. You're like, okay, far from ideal, but there we go. But no, really excited for the gym to come back. Excited to see people again. Excited to actually see competitions might start up again at some point. Who knows? So yeah, it's good. The world might start getting back to normal at some point.
Fingers fucking crossed, mate. I know my comp that got cancelled. That's been redone for October 18th. So it's
Brilliant.
quite good. There's like 14 weeks for that. So did you have anything in place
Um,
competition-wise, or?
No, I mean there was meant to be one competition sort of around nowish, sort of for weightlifting, for British weightlifting, for the sort of North Open, which is kind of a series of 4 competitions just for kind of people of sort of amateur standards. So that obviously got cancelled. There's meant to be one, I think, around October time, and then a final one in December. So fingers crossed that they'll actually happen and can get back to competing and training for something instead of just training for like no real particular goal, just to get stronger, which
No,
is always good.
definitely. No, definitely. I think that's the same bit for everyone, really. Like, some people have got that drive naturally to just train and train and train, but I'm sort of in the same bit that you were talking about there. If there's nothing to train for, your drive and motivation just goes absolutely
Definitely.
to if
Yeah.
not with it. But no, like you say, it's great that we've got this great announcement, and finally we can look forward to getting back to some form of normality, like you say.
Can't wait.
Cannot wait. So obviously, the purpose of today is we are going to be talking Olympic lifting 101, and that's why we have Mark. Who better to speak about that? We did ask Joe, but Joe was a shitbag and said he didn't want to hear his own voice. So, not to dish you too much, Joe, but man up and get your voice heard.
I mean, I don't have the best voice, so it's not that much better than like hearing a Geordie.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But it is a very eloquent voice, mate. So, I'll give you that. But yeah, I know what you mean. Geordie might have been a bit hard to understand, but it's fine.
just more fun, I don't know.
Exactly. So yeah, so obviously, when we talk about as many topics as we can attempt to cover. So, Mark, fire away. Where would you want to start, really?
So, I mean, kind of just Olympic lifting overall. Obviously, I'm not too sure exactly what sort of the spread of audience is, but for those who aren't too familiar with it, obviously it is an Olympic event for now, until sort of any other issues come up, but it is still an Olympic sport, has been for many, many years. I think the first time it was around just the turn of the 20th century. So it's been around in some form for like really long time. Obviously, strength sports in general have been sort of a thing for thousands of years, just who can lift the biggest tree, rock, whatever. But in terms of Olympic lifting with snatch and clean and jerk, it's kind of evolved over the period of last sort of 100 so years. So it started with there was a one-handed lift and then a two-handed lift. So it was basically in any form who could lift the heaviest thing with one hand and who could lift the heaviest thing with 2 hands. Sounds pretty straightforward. Then they moved on to basically the same sort of thing, but then where it was kind of split up a bit more into a clean and then a press or a jerk, and then also a snatch. So it, instead of being one-handed or two-handed, you then got it split up into movements. So obviously the clean and jerk, you lift it from the floor up to shoulders, and then from shoulders into the air, ideally with full lockout these days. And then snatch is obviously one smooth movement from the floor into the air, locked out, stand up, you're sorted. So it's been quite a big sort of development over, especially since I think around 1974, the clean and press got basically removed from competition because they realised, okay, this is really difficult to judge. We can't tell whether they're sort of using any form of hitching or any form of sort of basically just a way to get the bar up that isn't kind of within the rules. So they decided, right, let's cut out the press. It's now just going to be a clean and jerk. We're going to refine the rules down to obviously no hitching, sort of no stopping anywhere up the lift other than obviously at the top of the front squat after the clean, and then jerks and snatches, it has to be complete lockout. Obviously with technology, sort of the last 20 years or so, they've now got sort of a jury of frame by frame cameras, where if a jury of 5 members decides, right, okay, the 3 referees kind of made a bit of contentious call, they can overrule it if they can prove with frame by frame cameras that, say, there wasn't a complete lockout, or there was a slight arm bend, or there was some other issue, then they can sort of move that. So in terms of sport itself, it's sort of grown quite a lot. In terms of audience, it's not kind of a big sport, but most people, if you say weightlifting to them, they'll have some sort of idea of what it is.
Yeah.
They'll think, okay, it's probably where they've got that massive bar, big burly blokes, nothing like what I look like, lifting really heavy things over their heads, some of them like breaking wrists or whatever. So people have got some sort of idea what it is, but obviously then with CrossFit coming in, the last sort of, I know about 15 years that's started becoming sort of quite a big sport. The fact that they use Olympic lifting in some of their events has kind of grown the popularity of the sport. So it's exciting to be involved with Olympic weightlifting, just because there's so much going on and it's still developing now. Like you could look at sort of say 5-6 years ago, and there's things that have changed since, just to make the sport, well, try to make the sport fairer, try to make it more inclusive. For example, I think it was just past 2000 that it was the first Olympics where women were allowed to compete.
Okay.
Which kind of seems a bit backwards. Obviously, this day and age, you think, well, surely there's going to be sort of more equality in sort of men and women competing, but that was only about 20 years ago. So there's still loads of different stuff changing, loads of sort of developments in the sport, and it's just exciting to be part of it.
Cool. And I guess, like, what got you into it then? Like, I know you sort of briefly met in JD, but obviously, we've become, more acquainted in Taylor's. But what was it that got you into Olympic lifting?
So 4th year of uni. So I went to uni in Liverpool. 4th year of uni. In just the start of the 2nd term, so I was basically on the home stretch of finishing my degree. I saw there was a poster up for strength and conditioning, and I thought, you know what, I like the gym. I've been to the gym like last sort of year and a half, just to, I don't know, just basically bodybuilding exercises, just because it made me feel good. I enjoyed it. It was just fun to do. So I saw this poster and I thought, okay, strength and conditioning, I'll give that a go, because there's like a period where you can start a new sport at uni and it's free. So I thought, great opportunity. Then I met Joe McHale, who's now the Olympic coach at Taylor's. He led the Olympic weightlifting class, sort of met him, joined one of those classes and thought, right, I'm not really kind of that good at this, but I'll just keep going because I've literally got nothing to lose. I might as well just give it a go, and it's a bit of fun. So basically all through that term, I never really got the hang of doing the actual Olympic lifts themselves, but I got pretty good at squatting in terms of getting sort of the right movement, my pulls, sort of presses, everything like that. So the constituent parts that you now consider accessories to Olympic weightlifting, I kind of got them to a decent level. And that basically saw me through for a few months after uni. Then Joe, through Taylor's, when it was still back in Wavetree, in the sort of old building, he did a sort of, I think it was a 12-week course, basically for beginners or for anyone from any sort of level to just do Olympic lifting coached. So got in touch, thought, you know what, like now I'm employed, got a bit more money, so I can actually afford to sort of do stuff like this. Still interested in it. Kind of started it because I wanted to get into CrossFit.
Yeah.
Because that summer there was kind of loads of stuff going on. Obviously, had time to watch stuff. Thought, well, my route into CrossFit, I kind of still need to be able to lift the calisthenics and the like gymnastics and the sort of cardio side of CrossFit. I thought I can kind of get through that. Just well, I kind of thought I could probably get through that myself. But the Olympic lifting, I thought, no, I need a coach for that, because that's something where it's a very it's a very sort of highly skilled movement where you're, I'd think, a much greater risk of injury if you get it wrong than, say, a muscle up. Obviously, you can like fall off the bar and fall flat on your back. You'd probably kill yourself. But in terms of sort of the level that I'd be looking at, I thought, well, one thing I want to get down is the Olympic movements. So I started that. A few weeks in, I realised, you know what, don't want to do CrossFit anymore. I just want to stick with Olympic lifting. So did that, did the course, learned how to do a half decent clean and jerk and a snatch. And then obviously when Taylor's opened in town, then was it just a bit over a year ago, then joined pretty much straight away when it opened, and it kind of shut off from there. So it's kind of been a bit staggered. It hasn't been the smoothest route into sort of sport as some people do when they literally just go to a coach and then they're in it straight away. But I think my appreciation for the sport in terms of the time I've spent sort of learning about it, doing the reading behind it, understanding the processes that go into it, as well as I'm a technical official and soon to be level 1 coach for British weightlifting as well. So I've kind of done that side of it as well. And then hopefully over the next few years, I'll just get stronger and be able to sort of compete at as high a level as I can.
Yeah. I mean, nice, but you know, that's always something that like I've known about you, like is, you know, you're very much the Ollie person to talk to. Like anything that I'd ever want to know, you'd be the person I'd go to. You know, you just seem to know it back to front, and you know that's why you're on this episode right now. So yeah, you know, it's a credit to you and play, mate. So with terms of competing, and so how's that gone for you so far?
So I've done 2 competitions so far. Did again, British weightlifting open in last October, where, I mean, not gonna lie, on Facebook and Instagram, everything, I said, oh, I came second in my first ever competition. Put my cards on the table, there was me and one other guy in my weight class. So literally, as long as I totaled, so as long as I got a snatch and a clean jerk, I was going to come second, because the other guy was like, I mean, he was like
second. Still came second.
But it was really good. Anyway, so I managed to managed to total, competed for the first time, which was mad. Like it's such a different experience lifting in front of sort of 200 people. The room goes completely silent. You're there on the podium. You've got 200 pairs of eyes looking at you, and you've just got to lift. Compared to when you're in a gym, even sort of in JD or other commercial gyms where I've been at, you mess up, you might get a few people sort of looking, maybe sniggering, because they think, he's not doing it right or whatever, even though they might not know the first thing about Olympic lifting. But having that pressure can really sort of push you both ways.
Yeah.
So both competitions I've done, the other one was in March of this, previous March, it was like the week before lockdown happened, which is quite lucky. Both competitions, I missed my first attempt on snatch.
Okay.
Which, for anyone who's competing in lift in any sort of strength sport, you miss your first attempt, you've really got to kind of sort of take a seat, look at yourself, think, right, what am I doing? I'm here to lift, I'm here to do well, and then you've got to take it to that second attempt. which both times I did. The first competition, I hit a 65 kilo snatch and a 95 kilo clean and jerk, which I was more than happy with for my first competition, having like properly done sport for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I was happy with that. Then in March, I upped both lifts by 5 kilos, which again, more than happy, because I thought, you know what, as long as I increase it by a kilo, I'll be happy. I managed to up it by 5 in each. And I think at that point I was about around 20th in my weight category in the country, which is all right. I'm pretty happy with that, considering sort of at the time being 73 kilos and 6'3", compared to some of the other guys at 73 kilos when they're like 5'3", built like a fridge and like sort of a bit more, let's say, genetically appropriate for it. The main thing for me was thinking, right, well, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I want to do the sport, not because I'm at any sort of level where I need to care what ranking I am. I'm doing it because I enjoy doing weightlifting. And that's kind of the attitude that I'm going to keep, especially for like the near future anyway, because I mean, my goal eventually is to get to kind of the decent national level. So I'm going to be honest with myself, still having a career that isn't in sort of strength sports and then doing strength sports as a hobby, it would be very difficult to get to like the elite level.
Yeah.
I'm fine with admitting that. But what I want to do is get to a level where I might be at like the national championships, British championships, whatever.
Yeah.
And then be on the podium, well, be on the same platform as the guys that are actually going to like worlds or whatever. That would be great for me. So that's basically the aim for the next sort of 3, 4, 5 years, and then I'll be around 30 by then. So we'll kind of take it from there and see what happens.
Cool. And obviously, you mentioned it there being like 6'3". How do you find sort of the sport of weightlifting being taller? So, you know, the one thing that I do understand with Olympic lifting is everyone's just a dwarf. And, you know, I'm a very good presser, but that's because I'm a dwarf. And so obviously being the taller person, how do you find that?
It's a disadvantage. I'm not gonna lie. So being my weight, I mean, I'm like actively gaining weight now, sort of with a nutrition program. So I'm sort of gonna start trying to move up the categories to get into a category that's a bit more appropriate for my height. But the thing is, when I watch like, so I follow about 300 people on my weightlifting Instagram just to sort of see what they're doing and whatever, and all the guys that sort of my weight category are around sort of the like 5.5 foot. But obviously you don't see that height difference until you kind of see them compared to someone that's then my height, and you think, oh yeah, he's the same weight as me, but he'd come up to like my shoulders. And obviously, if you look at how the weightlifting movements work, and obviously it's the same for powerlifting, for strongman and stuff as well. Pulling is great when you're tall because you've got big long legs. You like my pulling massively outweighs my like squatting and pressing at the moment. Then squatting, obviously, if you've got a big torso and small legs, you're going to be at a bit more of an advantage to actually be able to make the weight go down, make it go up again. If you've only got legs that are like 3 foot tall, great. If you're like me, where your legs make up about 2/3 of your body, it's not ideal because the squats just take about 10 seconds to do per rep, and it's far from ideal. But it's kind of in a weird kind of way, it's what I enjoy about the sport.
Yeah.
That I can be like myself in it. Okay, fair enough. In a few years' time, I might bolt out. Well, hopefully, bolts out a bit, but I can still participate in sport, still compete at the level that I am at the moment. How I am, it doesn't. It's not like, say, I turn up at a rugby club and say, "All right, I want to play rugby." they'll look at me and think you're going to get snaps in half the first tackle you get, and that's basically it. Going to be honest,
Yeah.
but what I'm doing at the moment is partially just doing it because I enjoy it, but I also like the challenge of all those people in the past that have said, your legs are too small, or you're never going to be that strong, or whatever, and kind of get to the point where I think, right, if I get to national level, then I've proved a point. I can show that people that, like, no matter what their background is, I mean, this is getting really philosophical, but no matter what their background is, if you want to excel at something, if you want to sort of make that change, whether it's physically, sort of mentally, whatever, you can do it. But it just takes the hard work that you get from training sort of 6-7 days a week in the gym to actually get there.
That's a great message, mate, for, all forms of lifting. So, that's, such an important message to get out there. So if anyone's listening, like, just take that down, because, it's a great message to get across, mate. Really good. So, and I guess the next place to lead it down then is like heroes in the sport. Like, who are the people that you look up to at the elite level, even at like national level, things like that?
I mean, I don't really look at one particular lifter and think, right, that's kind of who I want to emulate in my lifts. I mean, in Olympic weightlifting anyway, generally, I mean, it kind of depends on different schools, different training centres, whatever, but generally lifters will be taught in a very specific sort of technical model, as British weightlifting does as well. You have a technical model which shows exactly how the lift should be carried out, in what order exactly, sort of, well, with a bit of sort of space in between, but exactly how the legs should look at this point in the lift. So should your shins be vertical when you get to the mid-hang position, for example, which might not mean much to people that aren't involved with weightlifting, but it's just there's very precise movements that you should hit, and then once you get to a certain level, which is usually once you get to like around sort of the international level, or at least the high national level, coaches and sort of institutions will allow the lifter to basically find their own technique that works. So there's quite a few lifters. So there's the Romanian lifter Toma Loredana, or Loredana Soma, I can't remember what way round her name goes because it's different on Instagram, I think. Anyway, so her jerk technique is very, very different to most people. So generally, if you look at someone doing clean jerk, if the jerk is a split jerk, so one foot's forward, one foot's back, you'll see in real time the feet land on the floor at exactly the same time. If you take it frame by frame, there's usually slight preference for the back foot to land slightly before, just to kind of balance the hips out when you do then lock out when you hit the floor, so that you don't kind of get what's called a hip shift, sort of where the hips then move back and the bar might then come forward. But how she lifts, she basically she dips when she's in jerk and drives. She'll move her back leg backwards, and then just before her back foot touches the floor, she'll then move her front foot. And it's honestly where you watch it in real time, and it's as if she's just stepping out. And so the sort of technique you find from lifters who have found their own style of lifting can actually be very, very, very diverse. But on the whole, you'll find, if you just watch like whole championships, most people are lifting exactly the same way. But then we get to the main man, Lasha Talakadze from Georgia, who people might have heard of if they're outside of weightlifting, but he's basically the best, like the strongest ever weightlifter that there is. So a few stats on my sheet here that I've got. I've just written bloody massive bloke, but he is. So he's 26 years old. He's 6'6", and he generally weighs around 170 kilos. So obviously super heavyweight, because weight classes at the moment only go up to 109 kilos and then 109 kilos plus. So he's huge. Not sure if he's like the biggest in terms of weight, but he's just a unit when you look at him. So he's Georgian. I've just got a list of stuff. I won't bore you with all the details, but he's the current super heavyweight champion and has been in 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019 World Championships, in European Championships, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. World Championship. He's world champion in 2016 Olympics. And obviously there wasn't 2016 World Championship because there was the Olympics instead. So he's dominant. If there's anyone in the sport of weightlifting who you could call basically the king at the moment, it's him.
Yeah.
In terms of just being massive, being so strong, being just absolute dominance in the sport. In the last few World Championships and European Championships, he's made countless world records. The last World Championships were in Thailand in September, and he opened with a 215 kilo snatch, which is already just think about it. That is mental. I think if I'm right, that's obviously the 20 kilo bar, 3 red plates, a blue plate, and then the collar, which is 2.5 kilos. So obviously we've got some very strong guys in the gym who are like deadlifting this kind of weight multiple times, and they're obviously crazy strong. But this guy's lifting it over his head in potentially the smoothest movement you'll see. And so he opened with that 215 kilo snatch, and he won the snatch like as an event with his opener. So that's already kind of where you see he can come onto the platform as maybe the second, third, or maybe even the last guy to turn up, and he'll win. Then, so his third attempt then was 220 kilos, which matched the heaviest snatch of all time, also by him. I think he hit that in 20. I think it was a couple of years previous, but anyway, crazy weight. Then he hit a 264 kilo clean and jerk, which is a lot of red plates. What is it? I don't even want to know, but it's a lot of red plates and a lot of stuff on top of it. And so it was obviously clean jerk world record in the category, and a total, so for snatch and clean jerk, of then 484 kilos, which is the biggest total in weightlifting history, like recorded ever. And then if you look at just record books, 3 highest totals of all time are his. So this is a guy from Georgia, he's 26, clearly got many years of lifting left. Obviously he was planning on doing the Olympics this year, that's kind of got pushed. But if we think then the following Olympics, I think it's France in 2024, he's going to be 30. So another 4 years of training. Generally, you're kind of at your peak in terms of strength around the late 20s. So we could potentially see, well, there's speculation whether he's going to hit a 500 kilo total, which would be phenomenal. Because obviously we saw like 500 kilo deadlift. Wow, that's amazing in itself. But then that's strongman. When you get to them weightlifting, and these guys are doing it for a snatch and clean jerk, it's a crazy amount of weight. So really, if people want to see a lot of weight being pushed overhead, just search for Lasha Tallett from Georgia and just enjoy it. That's what I'm going to say. Just enjoy what you can see.
Well, that's something straight away for me, mate, that I'm going to be doing as soon as we come off this, is following this guy. And like you say, putting, deadlifting 200 odd kilos is impressive enough. And, we spoke about this in a few previous podcasts, is that, when you're around lifting constantly, your conception of numbers just gets a bit skewed. And, the 200 kilo deadlift for anyone is impressive, but like you say, to put that over your head, it's just next level. Like, that is just insane. Like you say, 260 kilos, it's just like unfathomable.
It's how?
How? And we touched on it again. Like saying that, it's a lot of technique work, and that's where my appreciation probably lies. Is I find that's the finesse sport. Yours is very technical. my sport, strongman, is just lift weights, put above head. However it gets there, it gets
Yeah.
there. You know,
Yeah.
obviously with your sport, it's very much more technical, and you know, that's what I think anyone with the appreciation should just look into it a bit more. Is just see how technical it is. You know, I can't help when I get distracted. You know, when the ollie groups are on, I'll just stand there and just watch it for ages and just be like get distracted with my own training and just be like, oh, that's sick.
It's just funny because with the snatch and the clean and jerk, obviously both movements from the floor overhead in the simplest terms. With the snatch, there's such fine margins to what makes a good lift, so a successful lift, and what makes a miss. So it's crazy because with the clean and jerk, there's a lot. Well, I mean, obviously you've still got to be technically very, very good, but there's a lot more sort of scope for being able to just use brute strength. So you see quite a lot of guys when, well, I'm not sure if this is the reason behind it, but they might have a sort of 200 odd kilo clean and jerk, but their snatch will sort of be quite a bit below that, and they might lose all 3 attempts on snatch, yet they were pushing to potentially win a competition with a clean and jerk. And that's kind of what we're talking about with weightlifting. You've got obviously a lot of strength behind it. You've got there's elements where you just need to sort of suck it up, put the weight where you need it. But especially with a snatch, you've got to find sort of that zone where you can just sort of block everything out, think, right, I know where this is meant to go, but you just don't know. I mean, that's kind of talking from my experience. I'm sure when you get to sort of the elite level, they're kind of a bit more sort of able to sort of have distractions and still put up a good lift. But especially when you're kind of learning, when you're kind of at sort of an intermediate level, there's some days where it will just fly and you'll just be able to hit great numbers. You'll be able to do really good. Literally a week later, might be exactly the same conditions in the gym and nothing will work. And that's kind of what we're talking about, because with then other people that just go to the gym, hit some squat. I mean, obviously I'm not specifying any people in particular, but just the sort of culture of being able to go into a gym, do some bench press, do some shoulder press, I don't know, lat raises, whatever. You can kind of hit that. If it doesn't go well, screw it, I'll just go in sauna, treadmill, whatever, knock it out, go home. But then with Olympic weightlifting, there's so much mental fatigue that you get from it that you can hype yourself up for a big lift, get it to your shoulders and think, now this isn't going up. And then that's it. That could be your whole day that you then think about that same lift. And it can sort of put you off for weeks at a time. If you, like, say you go for a max, I mean, I'm sure it's the same for other sports as well, but say you're going for a max and it just doesn't come off, then you can be thinking about that one moment where maybe you didn't fully extend when you're going in the clean, or maybe in the snatch you think, oh, I should have locked out my elbows faster when I was dropping down to receive the bar. And then you've kind of got to work out, right, how can I put that right? How can I move on from that? And sort of it makes you grow as an athlete, I think, just having that sort of that difficulty that you get from a sport like this that's so brutal. You can hit great numbers one week, next week same thing, and have sort of a really bad time.
And I guess how do you cope with that mental fatigue? And you know, I say I've experienced it myself in terms of like missing a lift, and I guess that's something, missing a lift. But like you say, in a sport that's so technical, where you can break down those really small nuances and go, this is where I fucked up. How do you cope with that?
You know what? I can't speak for anyone else, because I think it completely depends on the person. It depends on how they condition themselves when they come into the gym. Depends on sort of what their attitudes are to the sport. If they just do it because they're good at it, or if they do it because they want to be really good, or they do it because they really enjoy it. I think it completely depends on the person. But personally, if if I say just have a bad day in the gym, because of kind of how weightlifting works for me, I'll then spend the next days, even weeks, reading as much as I can, watching as much as I can to see, right, what are other people doing in this exact position? So I'll, like, especially over lockdown, I've had loads of time to kill, which I've been very, very grateful for. But I've watched so much weightlifting just to make notes, see, right, what are people doing at this exact point, and what can I take away from that? Or what are they doing in their training that helps them? Say you've got a lifter that when they clean, when they make contact and then bring it up to their shoulders, they've actually then jumped back, say like a couple of inches or whatever. That's it's not a really bad thing, but it's not optimal, because obviously you want to reduce the sort of horizontal movement of the bar as much as possible. And if you then look at, okay, say for example, I drop under the bar too quickly, then the bar crashes onto my shoulders, and then you kind of get sat down in the bottom of a front squat, potentially with like a max weight. How do you then get up? If you learn the techniques and you learn how other people react to it, I think you can basically get to grips with how you can deal with it yourself. So my personal preference is reading and watching other people lift, and even just talking to people about it, seeing, right, okay, in this situation, what do you do? And then we'll just discuss it. It could be that they do something completely different to me, but then you've always got that second opinion. You've always got something that you can think, oh, okay, when he gets sat down in a squat, he'll kind of sit there for a second, brace, and then stand it up. Other people will kind of do what I've done in the past, which is kind of try and bounce out of it, which is personal preference at the end of the day, but you've got to know what you're going to do, because in competition, that can happen to you, and then you don't want that to be the first time that's happened. So kind of as an example, in the competition I had in March, my second attempt of clean and jerk, I was standing up from kind of the bottom of the clean in the front squat, standing up, and I just started tipping forward. So I kind of put a foot out, which obviously kind of stopped me tipping forward. But that itself, it was completely unexpected. Never had to do that in a clean before. And then you've got that few seconds before you're about to put around 100 kilos over your head, where you think, right, what am I doing? What have I got to do? Think of the main things that you think about when you're lifting, and just get it done. So it's a proper mental game as well as physical. I remember listening to the podcast from a while back where we're just talking about, say, you're doing deadlifts for reps, and your body's just telling you, no, can't do anymore, don't want to do anymore, I'm just going to shut down. And you just got to tell yourself, no, I'm going to do another one, and another one, and another one. And there's just that battle that you've got to get to grips with, because you just can't do weightlifting without sort of the idea of, right, my mind's bigger than my body. I can overpower it to say, right, you might be feeling like you're about to pass out, but you've just got to go for it. And that's kind of the battle that I'm sure everyone in the sport gets to at some point, where they've just got to learn you can do it, and you just got to give it a go.
No, definitely, mate, 100%. And like you say, it's just such a technical sport, and that's something that I hope this podcast can convey to people is, it's one thing missing a deadlift, it's one thing missing a squat, but like in a sport where, like, say, we so many little things to break down, like it's just doing the podcast now has given me a new appreciation for the sport of volley-lifting. So hopefully it does the same for other people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a great sport. In my opinion, it's a great sport because it's a leveler. You can get people that have done strength sports or come from a really athletic, strong background, and they'll get to do a jerk, and the timing just doesn't work in their heads. And it's something where then, sort of from my point of view, I come into it not being that strong, not being that big, but then I've kind of got that passion, that drive to get better. So I'll kind of use that side to get better. Other people have got a load of strength in reserve that, like, they might be able to squat 200 kilos, but they can't get into a front rack, so their biggest clean might only be 60. So it's just a leveler that I really appreciate, because as said kind of at the start when I was going off on one, anyone can get into it, but you've got to know that you've got to put the effort in. You can't half-ass Olympic weightlifting. You've got to kind of be there to get involved, get stuck in, know that there's going to be days where you just can't you just can't lift, your feet aren't moving, your legs feel like you don't have legs. It's just a lot of fun for that reason.
Nice. And I know obviously we touched on sort of the elite level, but like, who at the minute would you say is the countries that are sort of at the top and are sort of just pumping out athletes?
China. China. At the moment they are at the top of the game. Not going to go into any speculation about how they've got to the top. They've got obviously a massive pool that they can work with. A very sort of, compared to Western countries, they've got a very homogenous pool of athletes that they can filter in through their schools. Say, right, 19 of you, you're not going to make it. That one person, you're going to go off to the school in Beijing and train there. And then that's it. And then that's their job. They train. I think I read in one of the articles about one of the training centers in China that they get like 10 days off a year. And every single other day they're training. So these guys are machines. They're obviously very well trained. It's literally their life. Like, they train for a living. They weightlift for a living. I'm not too sure exactly how it works kind of in sort of the Soviet area for weightlifting, but some commentators are saying that it's a similar sort of thing to what was happening sort of with the Soviet influence on weightlifting, where it's their job. So they don't need to do anything in their life other than wake up, then they get their food sorted for them, they'll have a couple of hours training, then they'll probably have a massage, they'll eat again, everything's sorted for them, they'll train again, they'll eat, they'll go to bed. Great. If you ask me, that's a great life, but that's obviously how you then produce athletes who, for example, I think in World Championships in 2019 as well, the ones in Thailand, they got the same amount of medals. Team China got, I think, 18 medals, which is the same amount as the next 5 countries combined. So Team China at the top with 18. Might have been Armenia, but I'm not too sure. But then there was like North Korea, United States. But still, to have 18 medals and then the next countries in the leaderboard have 18 in total, you got to think, like, these guys are crazy. So 9 out of the 20 current world records in the total are by Chinese athletes. You've got that as well. So almost half of all the world records in, and that's also including the world records that currently are kind of just numbers. They're not held by athletes. So you've got the world standard. So when in 2018, when the weight classes, there was a shift in weight classes in 2018, basically to kind of give the sport a kind of fresh start after quite a few doping allegations. But even from the ones that have actually been reached by athletes, 9 out of 20 current world records are by Chinese athletes, and that kind of gives you an idea of, like, these guys are at the top of their game at the moment. You watch most of the A sessions, so like the top sessions in World Championships or Olympics, if there's a Chinese athlete, if you're someone who betted, you'd probably bet on the Chinese athlete, just because chances are they're going to do very, very well. You've got lifters like Shi Jiong, so he's a 73 kilo lifter, and he power cleaned on his first attempt, and then jerked 190 kilos. So obviously with power clean, for people who don't do weightlifting or aren't too sure, that's where instead of then lifting it up, getting to your shoulders and then going into a full squat to receive the bar, you're basically receiving the bar just, well, kind of between parallel and standing up. So you're getting the bar a lot higher than you would for a normal clean. And basically his attitude towards it when he was interviewed was, "I'll power clean until I can't power clean anymore." So he's that strong that he'll literally just power clean absolutely everything until the weight pushes him down.
You know.
And so you've got these sort of guys that you think they're going to be at the top level, like until they basically need to retire. And so that's kind of the situation you've got with the dominance of China at the moment, where you just think, right, what's going to stop them being that good? Is it going to be, for example, like Russia, where suddenly they're not allowed to compete? Who knows? Or is it more going to be that other countries are going to adopt the Chinese style of weightlifting? Probably not, because anyone can weightlift like the Chinese, but unless you're in China, you're not going to know what they're doing exactly. So they've got all these methodologies and these seminars and these like training camps and whatever that they market to sort of Europe and America, so you can go and train in China and like learn their secrets and whatever. And I'm not too sure how much I buy into it, but you got to think who they're producing, they've got to be doing something right.
No, definitely, mate, definitely. I guess next question really is what is the state of sort of British weightlifting? Like, where are we at in terms of sort of the world stage?
You know what? We're all right. We're all right. Generally, you won't see many British weightlifters on the podium. I think Emily Muscat, who's I want to say 87 kilo lifter for GB. I think it's 87 kilos. So the one before the super heavyweights for women. I think she came third in the clean and jerk in 2019. So she did really well there. But generally, you won't see British weightlifters on the platform. I'm not gonna like sort of. I'm not gonna suggest that there's anything wrong with the training, because I don't think there is. I think it's more to do with the fact that weightlifting doesn't get much funding at all. So if you look at, say, British cycling, when we did really well in 2012 Olympics, if you look at the amount of funding into British cycling, a lot of it. There was a lot of funding going into it. They had loads of resources. They got loads of facilities to allow for massive progression in British cycling. Obviously, we did really well in Tour de France with a few winners with that. But then with weightlifting, as far as I know, with Olympic funding, it kind of depends on how they think you're going to do at the Olympics. So they're not just like, especially with the funding that Britain gets anyway, they're not just going to flood a load of money into a sport where you think, you know what, you're never actually going to win. Let's be honest. But saying that, there are some really good weightlifters anyway. You've got people like Sarah Davies and Zoe Smith, who had quite an interesting, like, basically duel in the British and European Championships last summer. So they're sort of just really good weightlifters. For the guys, you've got Rooney. I think Rooney, don't know his last name, but he's kind of a middleweight male weightlifter. He's just rapid. He basically trains sprints as an accessory. He'll just go on the sprint track and just do sprints, and that's how he just gets, well, seems like on Instagram anyway, that's how he gets really fast. There's just a nice sort of, at the moment anyway, there seems to be quite a nice pool of British weightlifters at kind of a good elite-ish level. I'll say ish just because they're good in terms of kind of European standards, but then when you get to world standards, you're probably not going to see them on the podium. Then, of course, if people are interested on sort of watching kind of Klokov style circus tricks, you'll see a guy called Sonny Webster, who got into trouble, I think, last year with a doping ban. So obviously you've still got that. You think, well, if him with loads of influence and he was really popular, obviously because he was a good weightlifter, but if then he's kind of getting dragged into it, you think, well, you kind of don't want that as your figurehead of British weightlifting. You don't want someone who's got millions of followers on Instagram. I'm pretty sure he's got millions anyway, doing tricks with like Steffi Cohen and Juju Mufu, people like that, and then kind of they get pops, and then you think, well, that's not really the greatest thing for British weightlifting if you've still got that to contend with.
Yeah, because I believe it was Austrian he got caught with. I want to say
it was, yeah, Austrian. So I'm not an expert on sort of drugs and what they do, even though I've done like the clean sport awareness tests for British weightlifting because I'm for clean sport. But yeah, it was popped for something that, let's be honest, he probably knew he shouldn't be using. Obviously, people have got excuses for why they take certain drugs, but Austrine isn't one that you can just say, oh, whoops, it was in my whey protein by accident.
Yeah.
So it's not ideal, because the thing is, when I got into weightlifting, he was one of the guys that I followed, and I liked loads of his stuff because I thought, oh wow, he's really big and strong, and he does all this cool stuff, and he like puts a like 70 kilos on his head, and then he's got a hat on, and then he takes his hat off and the bar's still on his head, and then he squats with it, and then whatever he does, he does loads of tricks, makes it look really sort of exciting. But at the end of the day, if you want a clean sport, you've kind of got to look elsewhere, which is a real shame, I think, because then you've got people like Ilya Ilin for Kazakhstan, who he was putting up some ridiculous numbers when he was kind of at the top of his game, then got banned for doping, and then he's kind of come back, tried to compete a few times, and he's nowhere near. And it's a real shame, because in this sort of level, well, in this sport, especially if you look at like the history of it, there's a profound history of drug use. That's just a fact. That's just how the sport's been carried out for many years, because it's a strength sport. You take certain drugs, you get stronger. Great, but that's not really how it works for like the Olympics, or well, it's not how people think it should work for the Olympics or for World Championships. So it's weird. I'd like to think that in the future, British weightlifting is going to kind of get a bit more of a chance. Like, weightlifters are going to get sort of more funding, more like better facilities, better training, whatever. But at the moment, when you've got teams like China that are just so dominant, you've got the US, which have got, well, they're not as they're not dominant, but they've got a lot of money being flooded into them, and they're still not making the podium in as many weight classes. So yeah, it's a strange one, but I'm still optimistic. But you've got to be kind of realistic as well.
Yeah. I guess like, so that leads on nicely. I know we're going to cover it anyway, but like the doping thing, to like how sort of, and that's sort of the one thing that I think Ollie gets the bad rep for, is, you know, you don't really hear about Ollie in the mainstream until it's about doping.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest question is sort of, why is that? Why do you think that Ollie sort of is the one that gets picked on?
I think, well, again, without going in, well, I mean, I've kind of gone into politics, but without wanting to go too deep into it, there's been I should put this, says there's been allegations of issues within leadership of the IWF, so the International Weightlifting Federation, and it's kind of stemmed from there. So there's been allegations by a German documentary that have then resulted in resignation of the president of the IWF for corruption, for bribery, for doping, for cover-ups of positive tests, all this kind of stuff. And I think it's the fact that you can look physically at the people on the podium and you can think they're probably on drugs.
Yeah. Whereas,
again, not wanting to sort of accuse any other sports of things, because I don't know for a fact what's going on with other sports, but with other sports it seems that they might just be a bit more mainstream. For example, in athletics, you still get doping violations there, but it seems like once kind of someone gets banned, then you just don't hear from them for 5 years, then they come back, they're not very good anymore, and then they kind of swept under the carpet. Whereas for weightlifting, it just seems that the doping violations get a bit more inflated, that you've got people of such caliber, people that for some countries, for example, for Kazakhstan with Ilya Ilin, Kazakhstan, as far as I know, don't do as well in the Olympics in most other sports. Whereas then you get to weightlifting, and you've suddenly got a multiple-year world champion. Or I don't know, if you look at Colombia, you've got a good few weightlifters there who have done very, very well, still clean. Well, as far as clean, still no positive tests, which is great. But they're kind of the guys for their sport, for their country. So say for example, one of the Colombian lifters then gets popped, and then he's suddenly out. You've got potentially a whole country that's no longer present at an Olympic Games for weightlifting or at a World Championships for weightlifting. So I think it's more of kind of the effect of, right, these people are like at some point singularly representing their country, and if they then get taken out, then it's a whole country that's gone. It's not just one sprinter, or it's not just one person who does, I don't know, pole vault or something.
Yeah.
It's more that you've got that prominence of that one lifter who's massive, making all these weights, and then they get popped, and then you never see them again. It's a difficult one, because I mean, in my eyes, ideally, you wouldn't get any positive tests because no one would be doing drugs, but people want to be better than other people, and people want to be stronger and lift more weights because, I don't know, they get paid for every world record they make, or so it's kind of a real downer on the sport to know that, like, if you look at the BBC website on BBC Sport for weightlifting, quite a lot of the articles on there, this person's got banned, this person's got banned, corruption, doping violations, bribery, all this kind of stuff. You don't then get, this British weightlifter has come third in the clean jerk. You think, yeah.
I mean, like I say, that's definitely like what I've seen, coming into it. Like, it's very much, you are the bullied sport. Like, one bad thing goes and then they just run with it. Whereas, you hear about it in other sports, and like you say, it's, we hear about it, then we don't hear anything, then they just reappear. And, I think, fame, and, I think it tarnishes a lot of people's views when, it's such a beautiful sport, and I don't really, it's such a shame that it gets tarnished by the few that do want to, for want of a better word, cheat.
Yeah, I mean, you think of Tour de France when Lance Armstrong got popped, and what was that, like seven wins that he had or something, or like I'm sure it's some ridiculous number like that. But then that was just wiped out. But then you've got more down the line, where you think of the extreme sort of limits that they put their body through, and you think, okay, yeah, it kind of makes sense that they're potentially using blood doping or something.
Yeah.
And you think that's then tarnishing that sport. But in my opinion, it's selfish, because they're putting their success before the sport, which, I mean, if that's what gets you paid, if that's what your sort of career is, and you just want kind of the short-term benefit of getting $50,000 for making a world record, great, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Personally, I won't do it. I'll put my hands up straight away. I'm not going to take drugs to enhance my performance in weightlifting. But at the end of the day, it is the athlete's own choice. So there's not really much else we can do other than saying what our own weightlifting federation tells us, which is you shouldn't. But at the end of the day, people are going to do what they want.
Yeah, and like you say, mate, you know, when, especially in sports like this, like where you're constantly chasing those numbers, you're chasing those bigger PBs, you're chasing, you know, world records down. You know, it's about strength, and you know, the drugs are out there to provide that. And like you say, some people can have that short-sighted mind to go, I'll do that. That's what's going to get me my record. That's what's going to get me my 50 grand. And they drag the sport down with it, which is sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to do drugs, just do strongman. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk by some weightlifting commentators, again, not going to name because it's not really my place to, but there's been talk from some of them kind of playing devil's advocate, saying, well, should we go down the powerlifting route and have an untested and a tested? I mean, I'm not exactly what how it works for powerlifting in that sense, but the whole idea being, should you have a federation, let's call it, where Olympic weightlifters are allowed to take whatever they want, they can do what they want and still lift, and then we might be able to see I don't know, let's say for the sake of it, a 300 kilo snatch. That would be ridiculous, but if that's what people want to see, then they'll do it. In my opinion, I don't think they should. Just from kind of my ethics behind sort of drug taking in sport, but again, it might get to the point where the Olympic Committee says, you know what, weightlifting's caused so many issues of like on the Olympics itself. There's so many positive tests per 100 athletes that we're just going to wipe you out. Then the IWF thinks, how can we still make money apart from being in the Olympics? And then open it up to people being untested. So it's again one that I guess people at the top are going to make the decisions. Hopefully they're going to make the right decisions, and well, the right decisions is obviously kind of subjective, but the decisions that they should be making, again, subjective, but still, it's a difficult kind of area to traverse. But at the end of the day, decisions can be made, and we as athletes can do what we think is right, and just work on that.
Yeah. So do you reckon there will be a day then? So, you know, obviously you touched on it a little bit there, saying the Olympics may one day just get sick of it and just drop it. Do you think that before that happens, do you think the guys at the top might make the decision to say, look, the Olympics, that is a clean one, but this is a federation where you can compete untested, but you'll never be allowed to go in the Olympics? Do you think there's going to be a day where that'll come?
I don't think so. From what I've read from so there's Ursula Papendrea, who's the acting president of the IWF at the moment. She's kind of been, I think, vice chair of the IWF for many years. She's been kind of on the committees for sort of making arrangements for stuff. She's now coming as acting president, kind of after the resignation of the previous president, who's had corruption allegations. Her view on it, from absolutely every article I've read, every interview, I mean, obviously you can kind of make words, but there's no there's no hints that she'd allow for the sport to go down the route of saying, you know what, we'll let people in, we'll break away from the Olympics. I mean, we've got the word Olympic in our name. You kind of think that we should probably say or do, well, I say the IWF should do all it can to remain part of it and to remain as sort of an active member of the Olympics as a whole. But just in general, they had a few scares over the last few years where apparently there were meetings where the IOC sort of as a whole was basically saying, look, you've got until this date to prove that you're doing this, this, and this to kick doping out sport or to reduce your number of positives. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're as kind of the as kind of those who take part in the sport but have no real say in how it's run, we're not going to know what's going to happen until it does. So it could be that after the Olympics in Tokyo next year, that they then say, you know what, you've still had far too many positive tests. We can't kind of for the good of the Olympics itself, we can't afford to keep you in.
Yeah.
And they might then decide, yeah, we've kind of had it. See you later. We'll have like BMX and skateboarding and I don't know what else is coming in, but we'll have them instead. Yeah. So,
you know, fingers crossed it doesn't get to that. You know, like you say, if there's no hint at the moment, it's not going to happen. Then, you know, theory would suggest it isn't. But you know, it's
who knows? Who knows really? Like, if there's another sort of mass, say a whole country again, like Russia had a couple of years ago when they had to compete as Olympic athletes of Russia instead of Russia. If there's a whole countrywide like scandal again, you never know. It could then mean that various sports get eliminated, or if it's just weightlifting, which for us seems to be kind of the main one that's sort of on the chopping block. But yeah, again, we'll find out when we find out, and for the meantime, we'll just keep doing what we do and enjoy it.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. So, you know, is there any other subject you want to cover, or?
No, I mean, I was kind of interested to hear how, kind of in terms of the like comparisons with like strongman training. So obviously we've got loads more movements, we've got loads more sort of different things that that go on for a strongman event. So obviously with Olympic lifting, we've got the clean and jerk and the snatch. You've got variations of those lifts. You've got your accessories, you've got your squats, pulls, presses. If you want to get big, you do curls or rows or whatever, just for the sake of growing those muscles. Great. But with like strongman training, is there any sort of parallel? Do you have, so say you've got a log press, would you then train kind of accessories for that log press, or would you literally just get a log, press it a load of times, think, yeah, great, that's good, let's put more weight on it?
No, I mean, you know, definitely in that sense, yeah, no, there's the parables, you know, it's still about training those muscles within the movement. So, you know, yeah, there's still plenty of accessory stuff to do within that. So for me personally, it's a lot of just delt work, just delts, try and hammer arms. And, you know, what's bad about having an arm day if you can use the excuse that you need triceps?
Just literally get as big as you can.
Exactly. You know, again,
something
I mentioned in the last podcast, you know, like for me, strongman, like obviously I know a lot of people like push, pull, up and lower, but for me, I think the best thing for strongman is to use bodybuilding style accessory work, because it's, you know, obviously the point of bodybuilding is to make these muscles bigger. You know, the point of strongman is to lift the biggest weight. So, you know, to me, that just goes hand in hand. It just works, you know, in harmony. So, you know, yeah, it's strongman isn't just about doing that movement and hoping that you do that movement enough times that you just do the weight. You know, we do exactly the same as in sport. You know, those accessories are there, and we train them as much as possible. And you know, it's
no, it's just great because like you see obviously, especially in our gym in Taylor's, we've got the 3 different sports. We've got Olympic weightlifting, we've got powerlifting, we've got strongman. Especially from what I've seen, there don't seem to be that many places where you've got sort of the relationship between the 3 sports as we do at Taylor's, where sort of as he says, if you're sort of having a rest between sets, you'll then just sit down, watch some of the powerlifters, watch some of the weightlifters, see what they're doing, and that's kind of what I'm enjoying with this anyway. And especially hopefully in 2 weeks when we get back to the gym, that we'll just be able to see other people, see how they train. I don't know, maybe learn some stuff from other people, get some powerlifters overhead squatting, and I don't know, get could be that for a sort of pressing event, you might prefer to do like a jerk instead of a push press. Who knows?
I mean, we've had the American log record by Rob Kearney done as a split jerk. So there is Ollie creeping in.
It's great. It's just, I think with strength sports in general, it's an exhibition. At the end of the day, you can see. I think it's like Socrates or someone said, like, what are you doing if you're not? Well, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. What are you doing if you're not seeing what your body's capable? Like, if you can't sort of test it, if you can't push it to its physical limits, sort of what are you doing with yourself?
Yeah.
And I think just that sort of attitude to it, just seeing, right, we've got these bodies. Yeah, okay, we can choose to sit on the sofa, eat pizza, and watch Netflix like every day when we get home, or we can go to the gym, push some heavy stuff, or even not push some heavy stuff, just have a sort of workout where we're training ourselves, having that sort of mindset of, I want to get better and it's going to benefit me, whatever I do. And I just think that sort of attitude is just great with our sports, that we can see, okay, Mark, you're 6'3" and you only weigh like less than 80 kilos, but you can still put almost 1.5 times that over your head. So it's just interesting for us to see, right, most of us are like amateur level, but let's see how far we can get.
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, that's the beautiful thing of Taylor's. We probably are one of the few places that has the triangle in one place. You don't really see that too often, and that the harmony is there within all 3 of the people, like the communities, so to speak, that compete in all 3 of those. Is we've all got respect for one another, we've all got appreciation for one another's sports, and like you say, we I think we're all in the same boat, that we can't wait to get back, can't wait to see each other, and can't wait to get back to procrastinating from our own training regimes to watch other people.
Yeah, I'm just really looking forward to it, and especially after, I mean, it's kind of a bit soppy, but especially after this period where we've had sort of it's going to have been just over 4 months when we do go back, with not being in a gym. Yeah. And it's just going to be magical just coming in. Okay, it's going to be different. We're probably going to have quite a limit on who can be there at any one time and all this kind of stuff, but just to get back into that environment, see people again, train again, see like the hard work that people are putting in to get better. Just can't wait.
Can't wait at all, mate. And like just in regards to the podcast, mate, like absolutely can't thank you enough for coming on. This, I was very aware of your passion and your knowledge of the sport anyway, but this podcast just further shows, just how hard you work behind the scenes, not just within the sport, So thank you very much for coming on, mate, and can't wait to see you when we get back to it.
Cheers. Yeah. Cheers for having me on.
Nothing to thank, mate. And I will see you when I see you. And again, mate, thank you for coming on. See you later, mate.
Nice one. Bye.